Okay, so picking back up where I left off, figure 4.1 is on page 115 at the bottom of the page, and it's a good diagram talking about educational beliefs. Beliefs about teaching and learning, beliefs about students, beliefs about knowledge, beliefs about what is worth knowing, and personal beliefs in philosophical areas all help to determine your philosophy of education. And your philosophy of education determines your teaching behavior. So that's why this is all important, because all of this that we're going to talk about is going to mold you into the teacher that you are destined to become. And we hope at Mississippi Valley that what we impart on you will make you the best teacher possible. So going to page 117, it breaks it down by the sections that I just specified in that diagram. Beliefs about teaching and learning. Um, in the first paragraph, I want to focus on this. One of the most important components of your educational philosophy is your belief about teaching and learning. In other words, what will be your primary role as a teacher? Will it be to transmit knowledge to students and then guide their practice as they develop skills in using that knowledge? Or will it be to develop self-directed learners by building on students' interests, prior experiences, and current understandings? So one of them, basically one of them is about transmission of knowledge, while the second one is about constructing knowledge. So one, the teacher is more of the instrument of knowledge. The teacher is the primary source of the knowledge. And in the other one, to develop self-directed learners, you're building on things that not only the students are interested in, but their experiences, their current understandings, and then you're trying to get them more so involved in the educational process. So the student is more active in their own learning. This examples of that would be research projects, constructing, building things, sort of things of that nature. Okay, beliefs about students. All right, both of these paragraphs I'm going to go over. Your beliefs about students will have a great influence on how you teach. And that's an important enough statement to read again. Your beliefs about students will have a great influence on how you teach. Every teacher formulates an image in his or her mind about what their students are like, their dispositions, their skills, their motivation levels, and their expectations. There, that word again is about the motivation levels. What you believe students are like is based on your unique life experiences, particularly your observations of young people and your knowledge of human growth and development. So what that can mean is that, let's say that you were in you had to work while you were in school. Maybe you had circumstances where you were one of the primary breadwinners. Maybe you had one parent or you had a guardian that just did not make enough money. They may have been disabled and they couldn't help to take care of you properly. So you had to go to work, and because of that, of course you can go to work in the daytime, so you had to work at night. And perhaps maybe you slept in class because you were tired. And maybe some of those teachers saw you sleeping in class and thought, oh, he's lazy, or he's up all night, playing video games or watching it, TV or on the internet surfing. So they automatically took it as a down point. And of course, sleeping in class is not good, but there was a legitimate reason. So when you see a child sleeping in class, you automatically think, that, okay, well, you empathize. See what I'm saying? You empathize with the child that sleeps in class. Whereas other teachers would be more like, that person's lazy, or they're just bored or whatever. So that's an example of that. Negative views of students may promote teacher-student relationships based on fear and coercion rather than on trust and helpfulness. Extremely positive views may risk not providing students with sufficient structure and direction and not communicating sufficient sufficiently high expectations. I remember having a teacher, it was my sophomore year, and um, I never forget this. We were out on break and she was on duty, and she overheard a conversation that I was saying. And for some reason, I remember talking about we had a really high teen pregnancy rate at my high school, and I was one of few black females that didn't get pregnant. And I remembered saying something, not negative. I said something about a baby. I think I must have been talking about that I didn't know that so and so was pregnant. I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I do remember that my sophomore English teacher picked up part of my conversation, and she heard me either mention baby or pregnant, and I remember she just kind of just, oh no, please tell me you're not pregnant, please, no, 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 not you, not you. And I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. And she was like, oh, phew, thank God. And I remember thinking that, and I was actually kind of um happy that she wanted more from me than that. And not to say, and I'm not trying to down any teen mother, but it's just harder. And that's the reality of it. It's just harder being a teen mother. It's hard being a mother, and I'm 39. It's hard, but it's just harder. And the younger you are, the harder it is. And so, but she took that, and she thought I was, and I wasn't. And I remember kind of thinking, okay, she expects more out of me. I remember thinking that. So she had some high expectations for me, and thus I kind of, pumped, stuck out my chest a little more, and I wanted to live up to those expectations. So it is true. The expectations you set for your students really need to be high, because if they don't quite make it, just think they're still up here. So never set low expectations for students. Now I've had students that, God bless them, you know, some of them probably in jail because of the way they behaved. I could just look at them, and just, I saw no future. I mean, and I pray, I really do pray that they prove me wrong. I really do, but I don't know. I don't know. I know of what happened to some of them, and then some of the ones I don't know what happened to them. So eh, that's that, I guess. But always set high expectations. Don't set crazy, unrealistic expectations, but set the bar high. Um, in a final analysis, the truly professional teacher, the one who has a carefully thought out educational philosophy, recognizes that although children differ in their predispositions to learn and grow, they can all learn. Okay, so there that is. In regard to beliefs about students, it is important that teachers convey positive attitudes toward their students and a belief that they can learn. All right? Now, beliefs about knowledge. I'm down at the end of the page, end of this page here, page 117. How teachers view knowledge is directly related to how they go about teaching. If teachers view knowledge as a sum total of small bits of subject matter or discrete facts, students will most likely spend a great deal of time learning that information as a straight rote manner. Okay, so think about when you were in school. You had to do glossary. You had to, new chapter. It was typical, okay, the bolded words, or go back to the end of the chapter and look at these words. And then the first thing you do is look them up. And that was going to be a daily grade. And then on your test, you would have matching, or you would have a word bank and fill in the blanks. So those terms didn't necessarily teach you anything. They were there as knowledge for you to get. So also, going to the next page, page 118, I'm picking up in the indented paragraph. Other teachers view knowledge as more conceptually, that is, as consisting of the big ideas that enable us to understand and influence our environment. Such a teacher would want students to be able to explain how legislative decisions are made in state capitol, how an understanding of 8 parts of speech can empower a writer and enliven one's writing, how chemical elements are grouped into their atomic numbers. And then finally, I'm on the last paragraph on that page, going to page 119. Finally, teachers differ in their beliefs about whether students' increased understanding of their own experiences is a legitimate form of knowledge. Knowledge of self and one's experiences in the world is not the same as knowledge about a particular subject. Yet personal knowledge is essential for a full, satisfying life. So, pardon me, there is an aspect to teaching that goes beyond subject matter. It's kind of like the things that I was telling you about field experience. When I was telling you that, hey, you need your background check, you need this MAE, membership, because you're going to get that liability insurance. And then I started saying, because I preference that, I know I'm not mom, but let me play mom for a minute. Remember that? Well, that was leading up to this right here. This is a very important point. Sometimes teachers have to, tell students, okay, look, baby, go to the bathroom and wipe out, you got some crust in your eye, or go wipe your nose or whatever. Sometimes you have to do that, because if you don't do it and then the child gets made fun of, you know some things can be avoided. Okay, personal, and then you may always, and you have to walk a tightrope, because sometimes students are very defensive and they don't want you to talk to them about things like that. So you have to know how to kind of approach it. Okay, sometimes you can kind of make a joke out of it, but then some people are sensitive and can't take jokes. So you're going to have to know your students. And if you can talk to them about things like that, then do so, and do it in a professional manner. And that way, everybody goes away with something positive. Okay, now I'm turning the page to page 120. Beliefs about what is worth knowing. And I highlighted this whole paragraph. So, teachers have different ideas about what should be taught. One teacher tends to prefer a transmission view of knowledge, believes it's important that students learn basic skills: reading, writing, computation, and oral communication. They're very important things. These are the skills that they will need to be successful in their chosen occupations, as it is the school's responsibility to prepare students in the world of work. All right. Another teacher believes that the worthwhile content to be found in the great classics, for instance, the great books, like Shakespeare, um, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, um, The Grapes of Wrath, Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, those will be considered classical or great works. Though mastering the great ideas from sciences, math, literature, and history, students will be well prepared to deal with the world of the future. Still, another teacher who tends to be toward a constructivist view of teaching is most concerned with students learning how to reason, to communicate effectively, and to solve problems. And that's kind of more pushing Common Core right there. Students who master these cognitive, and anytime you see the word cognitive, because I learned this in my master's program. My master's is in school guidance and counseling, and um, a lot of the counseling skills that I learned was cognitive behavioral theory, or counseling, which cognitive means thinking. Okay, remember that cognitive thing means thinking. So always remember that. So where was I? Okay, students who master these cognitive or thinking processes will have learned how to learn. That's very important. I mean, it's kind of like teaching somebody their ABCs. I mean, No. Let me go back and make it a math analogy. Timetables. How did you learn your timetables? You memorized them. I memorized them. Probably you memorized them. But there are not many ways to learn timetables, but there are other ways, but they're just not many. And most people teach you, okay, you gotta learn your ones, your twos, your threes, and they pretty much teach you to from 1 to 12. Teach you, and you just memorize it. 12 times 12 is 144. 12 times 10 is 120, and so on. So, but really teaching the kids, like, why is 12 times 10 120? Well, because anything times 1, the 1 of the 10, is that number. And then the 0, okay, in the base of 10, well, that's not a good example because I'm not a math person, but what I'm trying to say is anything times 10 is that number in a base of 10. For instance, 5 times 10 is 50. So 12 times 10 is 120. But teaching them how to be able to explain that is more so of this constructivist part of it, or the cognitive part of it. And finally, yet another teacher is concerned with developing the whole child, teaching students to become self-actualizing persons. Thus, the content of the curriculum should be meaningful to the student, contributing as much as possible to the student's efforts to become a mature, well-integrated person. All right, pardon me. I can see myself back when I first started teaching doing this all the time. I always tried to make whatever I was teaching relevant. I tried to find a thread of something that would make it relevant to the real world, because I wanted them to know. I couldn't stand when a student asked me, why do I gotta know this? I'm like, oh my gosh. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, why do you need to know this? Yeah, I need to help. You need to know this because you need to get to the 8th grade if it was 7th grade, and that's true. But students, you gotta tell them, hey, this is directly related to something you're gonna need later. And no, maybe you won't need this in your job and life, but it's gonna help you matriculate through middle school, through high school, and that's important enough. And then some things you'd be surprised. Some things that you do learn in school, you do use in real life, so to speak. So, but I always try to make it relevant, and I must pump up my own background. Science deals with health, and when you get them on health, you can almost put it into almost anything, any aspects of life. So science is a really good field to go into. All right, so the under page 120, what are the branches of philosophy? There are some terms there: metaphysics, epistemology, and axology. And although they are relevant to what we're talking about, I didn't really go over that. I told for this lecture, I'm not really going to go over those. I told you that I skip around. If I skip chapters, then I skip things within the chapter. So these are going to be some terms that we're not going to go over. So go to page 121 toward the bottom and look at ethics. And I'm going to read a little bit of this. While axology addresses the question, what is valuable, ethics focus on what is good and evil, right and wrong, just and unjust. Okay? Knowledge of ethics can help a teacher solve many dilemmas that arise in the classroom. So why are we talking about ethics? Well, there's a whole chapter devoted to school law and ethics because of what this just said. This can help solve many dilemmas that you may or will have in a classroom. Frequently, teachers must take action in situations they are unable to gather all the relevant facts, where there's no simple course of action is totally right or wrong. Okay, so That's always good to have, and you need you need to be thinking about what are your own ethics. It poses a question down here. Well, an example, it talks about if you had a student that plagiarized a paper, should the teacher fail the student for the course if example of a swift decisive punishment will likely prevent the other students from plagiarizing, or should the teacher follow hunches about what would be in the student's long-term interest and have the student redo the term paper and risk the possibility of other students get the mistaken notion that plagiarism has no negative consequences. Another ethical dilemma, well, no, that's another example. So think about that. How would you handle that if you have a paper that you've assigned and you obviously can see that the student plagiarized it? Now there's even software that helps you with that. So if you were able to actually tell that this student, plagiarized something, how would you handle that? Your ethics can deal with that. You may just say, a rule is a rule. You may have gone over it before when you told them how you wanted the term paper done. If I find any plagiarism, it's a 0 or it's an F. And then you have to stand by that. But you may be of the thought to where, you just gonna have to do the paper over, and you may think, well, that's punishment enough. Um, so it just depends. There's another situation here. Another ethical dilemma is an elementary math teacher justified in is an elementary math teacher justified in trying to increase achievement for the whole class by separating two disruptive girls and placing one in a math group that's beneath her level or ability? Well, okay, some things are quite obvious. You don't punish a student for discipline by affecting their ability, okay? Their ability to learn or their knowledge has nothing to do with their discipline, except for the fact that sometimes kids act out because they don't understand the material, and sometimes they act out because they're bored. They may know it and just don't feel like going through it again. So in that case, the ability may affect the child's I don't want to say disposition, but the behavior of the child, which is the same thing. So, but that aside, you never punish a child by making them do something that affects their learning ability. So I'm going to ignore that because I've made 3 tapes and I'm trying to complete this. So so there are certain ethics that guide this process. Ethics can provide, and I'm on page 122, ethics can provide the student with ways of thinking about problems where it is difficult to determine the right course of action. Ethics can also help teachers to understand that ethical thinking and decision making are not just following rules. Okay? So sometimes you have to take in consideration the situation itself. Okay. All right. Logic on page 123. Logic. Logic is the area of philosophy that deals with the process of reasoning and identifies rules that will enable the thinker to reach valid conclusions. Perhaps the best known, now remember I told you we're going to get back to Socrates. So here we're going back to Socrates. Perhaps the best known teacher to use this inductive approach, which by the way I didn't talk about that, so let me go back and preference that. The 2 kinds of logical thinking processes that teachers most frequently have students master are deductive and inductive thinking. All right, the deductive approach requires the thinker to move from a general principle or proposition to a specific conclusion that's valid. Okay. By contrast, inductive reasoning moves from the specific to the general. Okay. So perhaps the best known teacher for inductive is the Greek philosopher Socrates. and he lived from 470 BC to 399 BC. His method of teaching today is known as the Socratic method, considered of holding philosophical conversations or dialects with his pupils. So in the Socratic method, you do what's called Socratic questioning. It is a discussion characterized by the following. The discussion leader is the only one who asks the questions. The discussion is systematic, so it's not a free-for-all. And then the leader's questions direct the discussion. Everyone participates in an effort to go beneath the surface and to explore the complexities of the topic or issue under discussion. Okay, so when we get to class, I'm going to model this for you. Okay, I'm not going to tell you the question I'm going to ask, but just remember, the discussion leader, that'll be me. I'll be the only one to ask the questions. All right, the discussion is systematic, so it's not a free-for-all. The leader's questions, that'll be me. I direct the discussion. Okay, and everyone participates in an effort to dig deeper, to get to the meat or beneath the surface and explore complexities of the topic or the issue of discussion. So when we get to class Tuesday, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Socrates, and then I'm going to model the Socratic method or the Socratic questioning model. Okay, we will see you in class September the 16th at 9:25. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. We have gotten through a few pages with minor disruptions, but we'll pick up with the 5 modern philosophical orientations to teaching. So from now on, when someone asks you your educational philosophy, you can say, I'm a perennialist, or I'm a progressivist, or I am an essentialist, I am an existentialist, or I believe the last one is, let me see, a social reconstructionist. So you'll be able to do that, and people will be impressed. Okay, we will see you all next Tuesday in class.